are still waiting on that key vote on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court. She's expected to be confirmed with at least one Republican vote. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine announcing last week that she would vote to confirm Jackson. Joining me now, Democratic strategist Xochitl Hinojosa, ABC News' Brittany Shepard, also former Trump administration official and co-host of the legal podcast Advisory Opinions, Sarah Isker, and also the Honorable Judge Yvette McGee Brown and civil rights attorney Shauna Lloyd. Whew, I got all my ladies in here today. There we go. And Sarah, you've got a new, is this a new podcast?
We've had a legal podcast for a couple years now. We follow the Supreme Court. Lots going on at the Supreme Court, and there'll be even more with Justice Jackson coming this fall.
Well, shame on me. That's the first time that we've teased it, so I need to get on the podcast action. Forgive me. Shame on me. I'm going to be put in detention. Please do not take me to court. That's awesome. We'll remember to pimp that podcast as much as we can. All right, Brittany, let's start with you. We are likely looking at a split vote in the committee here. Ties like this are rare. The majority party usually holds more seats on the committee than the minority, but the Senate is divided 50-50 between both parties, with Vice President Kamala Harris holding the tie-breaking vote. So what happens next?
Well, Kara, because things can rarely go right in Washington, we have a senatorial vote delay. Like you were teasing earlier, Senator Padilla of California is stuck in L.A. It looks like he actually is on his way. His flight is scheduled to land at 4 p.m., which would mean that he'll be able to get right in the nick of time in the 11th hour to solidify that 11-11 split yes-no vote. Okay, well then, Senator Schumer kicks this out, forcing a procedural vote tomorrow to hope for a greater vote on Thursday or Friday. Democrats have already secured Susan Collins' support, so there they have their banner, bipartisan, top of the fold headline, but they're hoping for more. They're hoping that folks like Mitt Romney and Lisa Murkowski, though, is running her own re-election campaign, so she has to be a little bit more judicious, pardon the pun, than Mitt Romney, a junior senator from Utah, on support. So that's kind of what's next beyond any more remarks that we might hear today before the yays and nays.
Okay, as we wait the yays and nays, Sarah, we talked about this at last hour. Senator Lindsey Graham saying if Republicans are in charge of the committee and control of the Senate, well, there just wouldn't have been a hearing for Judge Jackson. This calls for a little background context here.
Absolutely. I mean, he's referring to what has already happened when President Obama tried to fill Justice Scalia's seat in 2016. Republicans refused to hold a hearing then, and in fact waited for the election. President Trump wins. He appoints now Justice Gorsuch to that seat. Lindsey Graham at the time saying that if it had been a Republican president, he would have done the same thing. But bad luck for Senator Graham. The same thing does happen in 2016 when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passes. President Trump nominates Amy Coney Barrett. Lindsey Graham absolutely votes aye on Justice Amy Coney Barrett. The interesting thing looking forward, though, Kira, is going to be if there is another opening after the midterm elections, will Republicans controlling the Senate, let's say 1 year, 2 years before the next presidential election, hold a seat open for up to 2 years? Or will they hold a hearing on a Biden nominee? I think Senator Graham giving us a preview that Republicans at least think they will not hold a hearing if President Biden gets another Supreme Court nomination within his presidency, but if Republicans take back the Senate.
So, Xochitl, what do you think about Senator Graham's comments today?
I think that this is nothing but political football here, and he is trying to distract from actually this amazing nominee and her record. We're about to make history this week, and this is a huge win for President Biden, and I think that that can't get lost in all of this. This is a historic nomination. We're going to have the first Black woman on the Supreme Court, and the whole reason that it was possible is because President Biden made it a priority and he nominated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And, at the end of this week, it'll also be a bipartisan vote. And this is something that the Biden administration has been looking forward to. They've been wanting to find bipartisanship in either legislation or nomination. And this is a perfect example going into the midterm elections to really talk to his base, but also the broad electorate about kind of what they've accomplished and this amazing accomplishment. And so I think that what Lindsey Graham is talking about is nothing but a distraction. And I do think that he's trying to distract from the fact that Judge Jackson is extremely qualified and has the backing of bipartisan backing of law enforcement, and will get confirmed later this week.
All right, well, let's ditch the distraction then. And Judge Brown, bring us back to what's so spectacular about this moment. And that's not only that Judge Jackson is making history as the first black woman that will sit on the highest court in the land, but also the first one with a background as a public defender. And let's talk about why that's so important.
You know, it's so important to have somebody there that understands how our criminal justice system works. Interestingly, during the Senate confirmation hearings, you would hear some of the senators say, well, I know that there are other judges who went below the sentencing guidelines, but they followed what the prosecutor recommended. Our system has somehow become that if the prosecutor says it, it's okay, but if the defense attorney says it, somehow it must be wrong. Having a person like Judge Jackson, who has the experience of being on the other side, of being a criminal defense lawyer, who has had less resources to defend her clients against serious charges, is really going to add depth and analysis to the court that they don't currently have. She brings not only her richness of experience as a lawyer and a jurist, but having dealt with issues in her own family, having lived her life as a Black woman, I think she's going to add a tremendous amount to the court's deliberations, not just on criminal matters, but in all cases that come before her. Because remember that the court also deals with civil matters involving government overreach. She will look at that, I think, in a more critical way, because she knows that the government can at times overreach into people's lives. I think that's hugely important.
And Shauna, I mean, I know that you'll want to weigh into this as well as a lawyer, and Judge Jackson has talked about this as a judge, but when you look at KBJ and what she represents and her background, you take that with being the first woman on the Supreme Court. It's not just history, but you know, she's going to be a role model for so many other young women to know that, hey, look, I've got a chance now, too. She just proved it.
Absolutely. I think that the judge was right. What she brings with her experience as a public defender and having intimate knowledge of the criminal justice system is going to be invaluable on that court. It is a court that addresses those types of issues, and they need a voice that has actually seen it in application to address the things that will be coming before the court. You know, as an individual and as a professional, you know, she has a stellar career, and looking at what her accomplishments and seeing her demeanor and her unflappable nature during these particular hearings, it is definitely something that you can see little girls very excited about, looking forward to, and looking like someone who looks like them on our highest court. I think that's just significant to people in general, and I think people understand the historic nature. Despite all the other things that are trying to distract from that, this is a very historic moment, and I think it's one that we should definitely appreciate as we look across and look forward to our Supreme Court and the rulings that they are going to be making.
And even as we look at just the history being made and so many positive with regard to significance, it just goes beyond symbolism here, but just puts forward what this is going to mean moving on in the future. There are still Republicans, Sarah, like Senator Mike Lee of Utah, you know, going after Jackson and hammering on the fact that she refused to answer questions when asked by Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee for the definition of a woman. Jackson wouldn't provide an opinion about the so-called court packing either. Has Jackson adequately answered the questions that have been asked of her, even though they're trying to step her up and throw her for a loop?
Well, I think there's two answers to that question. You know, if you actually wanted to know how Justice Jackson thinks about the law and what kind of justice she's going to be, the answers she gave at the hearing clearly are not helpful to that end. But there's another way to look at this, which is, did she give different depth of answers than anyone else who's appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee in the last 20 years? No. You know, this started when Robert Bork was not confirmed to the Supreme Court. Everyone who was nominated since then learned from that not to give fulsome answers. And when Justice Ginsburg was in her confirmation hearing, in fact, she's the one who coined the idea that, well, if it could appear before the court, then I'm not going to answer it. Of course, almost everything could appear before the Supreme Court at some point. And so from that point forward, future justices really haven't answered any questions. So did she give fulsome answers? No. Should we have expected her to? Definitely not.
Sochi, what did you make of the tone of the questioning today?
Well, listen, I think Judge Jackson, she received about 20 hours of questions and answered them, right? And so she is highly qualified. She's talked about her judicial philosophy. And I think one thing that people don't necessarily talk about is she's turned over a wealth of documents over to this committee. She has turned over about 12,000 pages from the Sentencing Commission. She has turned over about 70,000 pages from the from her time as judge. And so she has been very transparent on her record. She has answered all of the questions. She has sat there with grace and taken the answers. She was never flustered and never worked up. She talked about exactly how she would handle and how she would act as a justice. And I think that she did very, very well. She was extremely impressive throughout the entire time. And now I think that what you just see from Republicans is they're trying to distract because they're trying to buy time and figure out how can they throw a wrench in this so that she's not confirmed. But the reality is that she is going to be confirmed later this week. And so everything that I see from now until then is, again, political football and all in an effort to distract.
Distraction, political football, soapbox. I think we've seen it all. Shauna, this is typical, though, that members take advantage of just kind of playing out their own agendas here, getting face time and getting their voice heard.
Absolutely. We've seen that in the last number of confirmations that there is a number and a lot of political grandstand for either side during these confirmation hearings that are more really about pushing their agenda than vetting the actual nominee. And in this one, what we did get a chance to see, despite the grandstanding, is the extensive caliber of this particular nominee. They went through her education, her experiences, the position she's held. This is a very accomplished nominee who has very definitive ideas on what it is that she sees as the role of a justice compared to what she sees as policy. So I think that we got to get out of this particular nominee a lot about her in listening to what her rulings were, listening to her background. And I think what we saw was an exemplary example of how a judge is supposed to conduct themselves. Very unflappable, very even-handed. And I think she tried to articulate her answers to every question that she was posed in the manner in which she saw to answer them. And I think that watching her and her demeanor throughout this process, we have a good sense of who she's going to be and what she's going to appear like on the bench.
And to wrap it all up, Judge Brown, when she does sit on that bench, what are you going to be looking for? What's the first thing you're going to want to hear, see, sit back and revel in?
When she takes her place, I have to tell you, it's going to be a proud day when she raises her hand and takes the oath. What I'm going to be looking for is, I think what we saw in the hearings, she is going to have strong questions that are based on testing the lawyer's theory of the case and how the law applies. I expect that she will be a consensus builder, as is her reputation on the circuit court. She will look for commonality amongst her fellow justices. She will try to find ways to build collegiality. And I think what the public doesn't appreciate is, once all of this theater is over, is that when you're on the court, you work with the other 8 justices. And so they will develop relationships outside of how they are ruling on cases. And so I think she will be a likable member for the other 8. And even though they may disagree on the law or how the law should be applied, she will be somebody that they will find interesting and want to spend time with, and they will find that her focus will always be on the law. It won't be personal, and that's what you want with a justice. And if I might just say one more thing, the country has not seen the best of us in these hearings, and both parties throughout history have their blame for how this has happened. Think about how remarkable it would be to say, this is a jurist who is qualified, who has a distinguished record, who has over 580 decisions, and there's only 7 that they questioned on. Think how remarkable it would be if we could vote her out in a bipartisan way based solely on her qualifications and not from who nominated her.
There you go, Judge. You always know where to leave it. Boom, hit the gavel. Ladies, thank you so much. Appreciate you all.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.